season is here. You have made it. The dog days of summer are over. Go get a fantasy magazine and a pumpkin spice latte.
No, do not get a pumpkin spice latte.
Time is now.
You're going to move into peppermint lattes way too soon.
Well, for me, I stay on pumpkin too long rather than getting to peppermint too soon. But I do have peppermint. There is a portion of the year carved out for that.
Grab a fantasy magazine and your favorite ice cold brew.
Yeah, that.
There you go.
Well, if it's during the day and you need to stay energized, get the pumpkin spice, and then later you get a pumpkin beer.
Listen, if it's during the day, grab a White Claw. Don't tell them I told you
to. I don't know what's worse, advising a grown man to get a White Claw or a pumpkin spice latte.
They're about the same.
I think I might have to throw that up as a poll. So here's the lineup for today. We're going to cover a different fantasy-related topic every week at 4 o'clock. And then John McKechnie is going to join us from rotowire.com at 4:20. And then we'll wrap the hour with our final 4 fantasy things. So, Stefan, kick it off with this. This week, I want to focus on players to avoid in your fantasy drafts. Just as important, if not more, the players you want to target in your fantasy draft. Because here's the reality.
Yes.
You can't have everybody.
You can't. And sometimes we focus so much on getting the guy with the name or getting the guy that we know did well or the guy that's our favorite. We don't understand that it's probably somebody we shouldn't pay attention to.
Or just having a list. Like everybody goes into a draft. I think we all do this, no matter your level of obsessiveness with fantasy. You go in with a list in mind of guys that you know you want to target. But sometimes we can get a little bit flustered, sometimes drunk during these fantasy drafts.
Yeah.
And I think it's just as important to remember the guys that you don't want to draft. That when you're in that moment, like if you had 3 guys in your queue or you had 3 names in mind and it boom, 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 1, 2, 3, sometimes you can get caught taking a player you don't even like.
Yeah, so happens all the time.
Having a list in mind of players where you're like, at that price, I am not touching them. Having that list side by side, the guys I want, the guys that I don't, I think it's a very important process.
It is. And I hate this music.
Okay, so we're going to switch that up. Oh, this is so much better.
This is so much better.
Felt like I was in the club for a second. Here's the thing, though. No matter how we do this, you can hate a player, but really you shouldn't hate the player themselves. You should hate their average draft position. A wise man once said, hate the ADP, don't hate the player. So
yeah, somebody said that.
And I'll quote the $1 Million Man here. Everybody's got a price.
There you go.
So this is not about disliking the players, especially the guys I'm about to mention at the beginning. It's more so not liking them where you have to draft them realistically in a fantasy draft. So let's get right to it. Here are the players that I'm avoiding if I can help it. I will start with Austin Ekeler. And this pains me because I really like him as a player.
Man.
But right now, Ekeler is the 13th player off the board, and I just can't get there with him. He's ahead of guys like Stephon Diggs, who I love. Najee Harris, who's going to have a monster workload with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Calvin Ridley, who I have personally as the 3rd best wide receiver, 3rd or 4th in the league this year for fantasy purposes. Antonio Gibson, I like more than him. Eckler's a dynamic receiver out of the backfield, but if I'm going to invest what is basically round 1 capital on a guy, I need someone that gets volume, that's durable, and that scores touchdowns, and he provides basically none of those things. He's supposed to be their bell cow back this year, but he's never actually done that. We're talking about a guy who's never rushed for more than 557 yards.
Yikes.
I makes up for that in the receiving game, but I still, if I'm going to draft a running back,
I need you to run.
I need you to run. There's value in that because what the yards turn into are touchdowns. If you're rushing for 1,000 yards, you're going to barrel into the end zone a few times. He doesn't get the goal line work. He doesn't get a lot of carries. It's a guy that I think is a good player to have on your fantasy team, but we're so hungry for the pass-catching running back. I think he's being a little bit overvalued as we inch closer to these drafts.
Especially in a position where you're talking about he's being listed as 13th off the board. I think that's a little high for him as well. But what happens is we get to this position where we're so thirsty for the running back because we've all gotten screwed by picking running backs before. We're going to get screwed by picking running backs this season. There's guys that we're going to choose that aren't going to be 1, 2, 3, and we're going to be like, man, that did not work out for us.
Right.
And Austin Ekeler felt like safety. He felt like, you know what? I can pick him. He feels like he's going to do a lot. And when I see him, he is doing a lot, but we're not paying attention to the stats and recognizing that the one thing he's not doing is running the football.
And I'm disappointed because he's somebody that I would have been really high on, except sometimes it works out to where it seems like the general public ends up higher on a guy than I am or we are, and it's somebody that we actually like. And that is also the case for the next guy on my list. Stefan, I don't think you're going to like this one very much.
Oh, no.
No, it's not Lamar.
Oh, I know it's not Lamar. Come on.
Patrick Mahomes. Because I know you're drafting this guy like 3rd overall this year. He's going way too high. Okay, he's the best quarterback going today, and I would love to have him on my fantasy team, but he's just too damn expensive. Let me give you a food analogy, Stefan, because that's what we do best. When McDonald's is over here selling burgers for $1, there's no reason if you're hungry to go right across the street and pay $20 for a hamburger. You just don't have to do it.
You're right about that.
You can do it, and that burger's probably really, really good. You're also out like $19 differential here. My problem with Mahomes is his price because he's being drafted so high that if you just waited until the 2nd-ranked quarterback was going off the board, it's a difference of 17 draft spots. Josh Allen is being drafted. His average draft position is 17 spots later than Patrick Mahomes. And truly, there's not that big of a difference between those two guys statistically.
Right.
Not real football. I'd much rather have Patrick Mahomes than Josh Allen. But statistically, they both can run. They've got monster arms. They've got great wide receivers. They're like the same guy fantasy-wise, so why would I not just wait to take Josh Allen and get a great player in round 2?
Because you've got to take Patrick Mahomes. Because who doesn't have to take Patrick Mahomes? Because he's the GOAT, the baby GOAT, and the greatest, and he's going to do all of these amazing things throughout the course of the season that are going to make us ooh and ah. But at the end of the day, especially with the quarterback play that we have in the NFL right now, you can take your top 5 quarterbacks and say, you know what? I'm kind of going to get the same thing from all of you. So you're right. I don't have to spend that draft capital on Patrick Mahomes when I can grab me a Josh Allen or even somebody else just a little bit later.
Well, and I was going to say the next guy. So Josh Allen is the consensus 2, and I get why. For me, he's 3, and there's not really a 1.
I don't have him at 2 either.
I have Lamar Jackson as the 2nd-ranked quarterback in fantasy this year, and I have Allen 3rd. But for me, it's a top tier of those 3 guys. I think those 3 guys are just slightly better than everybody else. I love Kyler Murray, but the size, the shoulder injury, all of those things, the offense that he's in with Cliff Kingsbury concern me. I love Mahomes, Allen, and Jackson, and I don't have a lot of personal separation between those 3 guys. Lamar Jackson, who I, again, have ranked at number 2, is going 25 spots after Patrick Mahomes.
I picked him up.
Waiting for Lamar rather than drafting Mahomes.
And that's what I did in the first draft that I had. That was exactly what I did. I went got my running back that I wanted really bad. I went and got my wide receiver that I wanted really bad. And in the 3rd round, bang, Lamar Jackson. It was a beautiful thing.
And that's exactly it. In the reality of the drafts that you guys have coming up, if you want Patrick Mahomes, mid-round 2 is as late as you are going to get him. And that is just too early when you could wait until the end of round 3 and get Lamar Jackson. Amari Cooper is the next guy on my list. And he's the first player on my list that I genuinely just don't like. It's not even a price thing. I just don't want Amari Cooper on my team. He falls into this you can have him category where I genuinely just don't want this guy. There's too much volatility game to game. Oftentimes, we ignore this part of fantasy football when we're doing our research. We look at what a guy scored last year, total points.
Yes.
We look at projections. You know how much that annoys me. Projected points. And we look at this like it's an overall score.
Yeah, we take the two. We basically average them. We take them, we put them together, we divide by 2, and we go, that's what this guy's going to be.
But that's not how fantasy football works. And I don't know how we get better at this in the fantasy community in projecting these guys going into a season. Because Amari Cooper is the perfect example of, it's great that he's going to have these explosive weeks where he's scoring like 50 points. The problem is he just sucked the 2 weeks before, and he was on your bench the week that he blew up. That's the way that guys like that work. And I don't want them on my team. That high fluctuation, and it happens every year. Mike Evans was like that last year, but I like Mike Evans this year. Tyler Lockett was like that last year.
Oh, my God, I got burned by Tyler Lockett last year.
But I like Tyler Lockett this year. Amari Cooper has done this every year of his career. This is who he is. He is Houdini, complete disappearing acts in the middle of the season. I want no part of Amari Cooper. Kenny Golladay is the next guy on my list. I don't trust his health. I don't trust his quarterback. I don't trust the Giants. Wow. I don't want any part of it. He played in just 4 games last year, and he's still having trouble getting onto the practice field with his new team. He's going from Matt Stafford to Daniel Jones. I am just not interested in Kenny Golladay.
Yikes. That right there is probably the take of the segment, because everybody is high on Golladay right now. Everybody believes he's going to be the sleeper hit. He's going to be the one to watch for. He's going to be that guy that's going to give you just the number of points that you need to win this particular week in your draft on your fantasy team. And I have not heard that from anybody yet. So I have to keep my eye on Golladay.
Stale. To me, he's a stale fantasy option. Next on my list, any Buccaneers running back. They would all have to fall very far to me in order to draft them. Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, Giovanni Bernard. I'm not interested in any of them. Bruce Arians named Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette co-starters. That's like fantasy vomit. Want no part of it. And Giovanni Bernard is the type of player that Brady typically leans on more so than those other 2 guys. I don't know what to make of it. It goes back to that same argument with Amari Cooper. One of these guys is going to have a good week, and then the next week he'll do nothing. If I can't trust you in my starting lineup, then I'm not going to invest a high draft pick in making sure you're on my team, even though these are guys that are really good players and they're on a good offense. They check a lot of boxes, but I just can't trust them.
You're looking at equal distribution. And one of the problems that you have when you draft a Ravens running back is you're going to get so much equal distribution that you're not going to get enough for it to make a difference. Those 3 running backs in Tampa Bay are going to give you that problem. What I would say, though, is not in terms of your draft, but after the season has started, give me week 6, week 7, start paying attention to what Giovanni Bernard is doing and where he's at, and you might be able to rip him off the waiver wires.
Or, along those same lines, if the player in that backfield ends up frustrating a fantasy owner, will end up on the waiver wire, or they'll end up as easy trade bait. And so that's really the route that you should go. Rather than reaching on Ronald Jones, wait until Ronald Jones has 2 bad weeks and then throw some random offer at the guy that has Ronald Jones and basically get him for free.
Yeah.
You know that's going to happen, so why overpay in the draft? The next guy on my list is Melvin Gordon. He bores me. I'm over the career of Melvin Gordon. I'm sorry. And B, he's going to lose his job to Javonte Williams out of North Carolina by probably week 5. Followed by Odell Beckham Jr. Now, you talk about a name that people want to draft?
Yes, they do.
I love OBJ. Did you know that Sterling Shepard is averaging more fantasy points per game over the last couple of seasons than Odell Beckham Jr.? Sterling Shepard. And tell me where you're drafting Sterling Shepard. I'll wait. You're not. Okay, so don't let the name value fool you. This guy is not the same wide receiver anymore. Baker Mayfield doesn't need him to be successful. They run the ball a ton in Cleveland. I'm not interested in Odell and will not let the name fool me no matter how drunk I get on fantasy draft night.
The problem with Odell is everybody's expecting him to do an Antonio Brown magician act and be reputable and be somebody that Baker Mayfield relies on halfway through the season and the start of the season. And it really, you're right. It really doesn't look like he's going to be that guy. And I will take it one step farther and say, I'll be surprised if Odell even stays on the team the entire season. If he's gone halfway through the season or 3/4 of the way through the season, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I would look away from Odell.
With some injury issues, I don't think he'll be. There's a chance he's not even the leading receiver on this team. The last guy on my list is DJ Chark. I'm not even sure.
Whoa!
I'm not even sure he's on the Jags anymore at this point. Marvin Jones has been the number one wide receiver through the preseason. Laviska Shenault has a role carved out on that team as the gadget guy, especially now that Travis Etienne is injured. And DJ Chark, he took a massive step back in 2020 after what looked like a 2019 breakout. I don't trust him, and it looks like Trevor Lawrence isn't leaning on him. Now, I know he's been missing time because of a broken hand, but he's already established a rapport with a guy that does what he does, but he does it better. Marvin Jones is just a better version of DJ Chark. That's all it is.
All right, so I'm going to take your advice on this one because I had DJ Chark on my queue. I had him on my queue as somebody that I wasn't taking him early. I was taking him very late. But I had him on my queue as somebody who was going to be that guy that I could plug in when I got pissed off at one of my other wide receivers who hadn't done anything in 3 weeks. And I could plug DJ Chark in there. And he was going to maintain, you need that guy who's just going to get you the 7 to 10 points, the 6 to 8 points a game. And that's what I was looking at getting from him. So we'll see.
Well, if he falls at the right price, then fine. I want him basically free in like the 13th round.